Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The slap landed loud enough to silence the diner. Etta Mae Holloway didn't scream. She didn't fall. She just stood there, frozen, one hand still wrapped around a chipped white coffee mug, the other trembling in the air like it had forgotten where to go. The sound echoed off the chrome stools and cracked vinyl booths of Mason's diner, sharp as a gunshot. Every fork stopped midair. Every mouth went dry. Her cheek burned. Not just from pain but from shame. Etta was 72 years old. Her back curved from decades of cleaning houses that weren't hers. Her hands smelled faintly of lemon soap and old pennies. She wore her church cardigan, the blue one with the missing button, because Sundays made her feel brave. She had only asked a simple thing. "Excuse me, sir, I think you cut in front of me." The man who slapped her was named Brent Calder. Big, red-faced, baseball cap pulled low like it was hiding something ugly. He didn't apologize. He smirked. His voice carried the kind of poison that doesn't need shouting. "Mind your place, old woman." A few people gasped. Someone whispered, "Jesus." A waitress dropped a plate. Coffee spilled across the counter, dark and spreading like a bruise. Etta's mug tipped, shattered at her feet. Porcelain skidded across the tile like broken teeth. Inside Etta's chest, something folded in on itself. She had lived long enough to recognize this moment, the kind that stains you forever if you don't survive it right. She remembered Mississippi heat and signs she wasn't allowed to read aloud. She remembered lowering her eyes so her son wouldn't see fear living there. She remembered promises she made when she raised him alone. I will not teach you to hate. I will teach you to endure. Brent leaned closer now. Too close. His breath smelled of grease and cheap beer. "Thought you people learned by now," he muttered. Etta's knees shook. But she didn't cry. She reached into her purse with careful fingers and pulled out exact change for her coffee. Coins clinked softly, too softly for a room this tense. She placed them on the counter like an offering. "I don't want trouble," she said. Her voice was thin but it didn't break. That's when Brent laughed. A hard, barking sound. Too late for that. He raised his hand again. Across the diner, a man in a dark hoodie slowly stood up. No one noticed him at first. He had been sitting alone in the far booth, back to the wall, coffee untouched. His posture was calm. The kind of stillness that didn't belong in places like diners. His jaw tightened, not with anger but control. His name was Elias Holloway. And the sound of his mother being slapped had just reached something deep and lethal inside him. Elias took one step forward. The floor creaked under his boot. Brent turned halfway, annoyed. "Sit down, this ain't your..." Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He simply met the man's eyes, and in that look was something Brent had never seen before. Not fear. Not rage. Judgment. Etta finally looked up. Her breath caught when she recognized him. The son she hadn't seen in 3 years. The one who always called from blocked numbers. The one who never told her where he was. "Eli?" she whispered. He didn't answer her yet. Because at that exact moment the diner doors swung open, and the past came rushing in with the cold. And nothing, would ever be the same again. Etta Mae Holloway used to say silence could keep a boy alive. She learned that lesson early, long before her son Elias ever took his first breath. Silence kept you from answering back. Silence kept you from asking why. Silence kept your head down when the world decided your skin made you dangerous just for existing. Elias grew up inside that quiet. They lived in a narrow house on Juniper Row, paint peeling like old scabs, floorboards always sighing under tired feet. Etta cleaned homes during the day and offices at night. Elias learned to make dinner by 8 and lock the door by 9. He learned how to hear footsteps before they reached the porch. He learned when not to speak. At school, teachers called him polite. Other kids called him weird. Grown men watched him too closely. Cops pulled him aside for no reason at all. Etta saw it happening and hated herself for every warning she gave instead of protection she couldn't afford. "Eyes down," she'd whisper when sirens passed. "Hands visible," when uniforms got close. "Come straight home, always." Elias obeyed. But something inside him hardened anyway. He was 13 the first time he saw his mother humiliated in public. A grocery store. A manager accusing her of stealing because her purse looked too full. Etta had smiled through it, hands shaking as she emptied the bag onto the counter. Lipstick, receipts, coupons folded like prayers. Elias remembered the heat behind his eyes. Remembered how his fists clenched until his nails bit skin. That night he didn't sleep. By 16, Elias ran miles before dawn. Not to be fast but to feel strong. He watched videos late at night on his cracked phone. Discipline, breathing, control. Men who moved like they knew something the world didn't. Men who never panicked. Never begged. At 18 he enlisted without telling Etta. He left a note on the kitchen table, folded neatly beside her Bible. Asterisk, I need to learn how to protect us, asterisk. Boot camp broke him down to bone and rebuilt him with rules. Pain made sense there. Orders were clean. Silence was useful. Elias learned how to turn fear into fuel and anger into precision. He learned how to fall without shattering. How to watch everything and reveal nothing. When he earned the trident, he didn't celebrate. He called his mother. I'm okay, he told her. She cried anyway. Years passed in pieces. Short calls. Missed holidays. Long gaps of nothing at all. Elias never told her where he went. Never explained the scars or the dreams that woke him up breathing like he was drowning. Etta told people her son worked overseas. She kept his childhood room clean. She prayed over his photo every night. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was how many times Elias had stood between the helpless and the cruel. How many men like Brent Calder he had faced in darker places with worse intentions. How restraint had become his sharpest weapon. Back in Mason's diner, years later, all of that history pressed against Elias's spine as he stood between his mother and the man who had slapped her. Etta's voice trembled behind him. Eli, please. He didn't turn yet. Brent scoffed. You her bodyguard now? Elias finally spoke. Soft. Measured. Each word placed carefully like stepping on thin ice. You're going to apologize, he said. The diner held its breath. Brent laughed again, but this time it sounded unsure. Or what? Elias glanced down at his mother's trembling hands. At the red mark rising on her cheek. At the years of quiet endurance carved into her posture. Then he looked back up. Or you'll learn, he said, what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Outside, a police siren wailed somewhere far off. Inside, the past and present collided. And the real danger was just beginning. Brent Calder should have walked away. Later people would say that. They'd say it with the safety of hindsight, shaking their heads like it was obvious. But in the moment, Brent didn't see danger. He saw a tall black man in a hoodie, calm to the point of arrogance. He saw a diner full of witnesses and assumed that meant rules. Protection. Control. He was wrong. You threatening me? Brent snapped, puffing his chest. His friends, two men built like bar stools and bad decisions, shifted behind him. One smirked. The other glanced around, checking who was watching. Everyone was. Elias stayed still. That stillness wasn't weakness. It was restraint pulled tight. Behind him, Etta's heart hammered so loud she was sure others could hear it. She reached for her son's sleeve, her fingers brushing the fabric like she might ground him back into the boy she raised. Eli, please, she whispered. I don't want you in trouble. Trouble. The word tasted bitter to Elias. Trouble was what happened when you defended yourself and the world decided you shouldn't have. Trouble was what followed men who looked like him no matter how carefully they behaved. He turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see his face. His eyes were steady. Warm. I've got you, he said quietly. Those 3 words broke something open inside her. Brent rolled his eyes. You hear that, Ma? Your boy's got you. Cute. He leaned closer, invading space again. You gonna hit me? In front of all these people? Elias didn't answer. Instead, he did something unexpected. He took a step back. The movement confused Brent. It confused everyone. Elias raised his hands slowly, palms open, voice calm enough to lower the temperature in the room. No one's here to fight, he said. Just say sorry. And walk away. For a split second, Brent hesitated. That was the moment. The fork in the road. The place where pride could have been swallowed whole. Instead, Brent slapped Elias's hands aside. Don't tell me what to do. The sound of skin on skin snapped through the diner again, but this time it landed differently. Elias felt the sting, yes. But more than that, he felt permission drain away. The room shifted. Elias moved. It happened fast. Too fast for phones. Too fast for bravado. One controlled step inside Brent's reach. A twist of the wrist. A pivot of hips learned in places where mistakes meant body bags. Brent gasped as his balance vanished. His face met the counter with a dull, ugly thud. Coffee splashed. A spoon clattered. One of his friends lunged forward, and froze when Elias didn't even look at him. "Don't," Elias said. That single word carried weight. Experience. Consequence. The man stopped. Etta covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now, not from fear but release. For the first time in her life, she watched someone stand up for her without apologizing for it. Sirens grew louder. Elias released Brent carefully, stepping back again, hands visible. Controlled. Cling. The diner erupted in whispers. "Call the police. They already are. Did you see that?" Elias knelt beside his mother, checking her cheek gently. His touch was light, reverent. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner," he said. Etta shook her head, crying. "You're here now." Outside, red and blue lights washed over the windows. And as the door swung open and uniforms poured in, Elias knew this moment wasn't over. It was only changing shape. Because justice, like silence, had a way of testing how much a person could carry. And Elias Holloway was about to find out just how heavy the truth could be. The first officer through the door was young. Too young to hide his nerves. His hand hovered near his belt as his eyes took in the scene. The man on the floor groaning, the shattered mug, the elderly woman crying, the tall black man standing with his hands open like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. "Everybody step back," the officer said. Elias stepped back first. That mattered. He knew it mattered. 2 more officers followed. Older. Heavier. Their eyes moved differently, less curious, more certain. One of them, Sergeant Paul Renner, took in Elias with a look that slid past facts and landed on assumptions. "What happened here?" Renner asked. Brent coughed from the floor. "He attacked me," he groaned, pointing. "Out of nowhere." The lie landed fast. Familiar. Smooth. Etta opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. Her throat felt locked like it had when she was a girl and truth felt dangerous. I was slapped," she finally said. Her voice shook. "That man hit me." Renner glanced at her briefly, then back at Brent. "You hurt, sir?" "My face," Brent said. "My pride." "Yeah." Elias said nothing. That silence stretched. Renner's eyes narrowed. "You got ID?" Elias reached slowly into his pocket, every movement deliberate. He handed over his wallet. Renner opened it, paused, then frowned. "You military?" "Yes, sir." "Where stationed?" Elias met his gaze. "Can't say." "That did it?" Renner's jaw tightened. "Turn around." Etta gasped. "No, he didn't do anything wrong." The younger officer hesitated, eyes flicking to the waitress who was now shaking as she spoke up. "Sir, I saw the whole thing." He was defending her. The older woman got slapped first. Others nodded. Quietly. Carefully. Renner exhaled through his nose. "We'll sort it out." Handcuffs clicked shut around Elias's wrists. Cold metal. Familiar weight. Elias didn't resist. As he was led outside, Etta followed, cardigan clutched tight like armor. "Please," she begged. "He's a good man. He's my son." Renner didn't look back. Outside, the night air felt sharp. Blue and red lights painted everything unreal. Elias was placed against a cruiser, hands cuffed behind him. The hood came off, revealing his face fully under the lights, calm, unreadable. "What's your name?" Renner asked. "Elias Holloway." Renner paused. Something flickered. Then he waved it off. Inside the diner, Brent sat up, already smiling again. At the station, Elias sat alone in a small room that smelled like disinfectant and old paper. The door clicked shut. Time slowed. He closed his eyes. This wasn't new. Different uniforms. Same tension. Across town, Etta sat on a hard plastic chair, hands folded, rocking slightly. She prayed, not for vengeance but for truth to be seen clearly. She thought of the little boy who used to hide behind her legs. The man who now carried storms inside his chest. An hour later, the door opened. A different officer stepped in. "Older. Come." He studied Elias for a long moment. "Your mother's pressing charges," the officer said. "Against Brent Calder." Elias opened his eyes. "And," the officer continued, "there's security footage. Clear as day." The air shifted. Renner stood in the doorway now, stiff. "You're free to go." Elias stood slowly. "Is she okay?" The officer nodded. "She's waiting." As Elias stepped out into the hallway, he felt something loosen inside him. Not victory, not relief. Just clarity. This wasn't about one slap. It was about everything that came before it. And everything that would follow. Because men like Brent Calder didn't stop when embarrassed. They escalated. And Elias knew the signs. Outside, as mother and son reunited under the buzzing station lights, a quiet promise settled between them. The worst was still coming. And this time, Elias wouldn't be caught standing alone. Brent Calder didn't sleep that night. He sat in his pickup outside his trailer, knuckles white around a sweating beer can, jaw grinding as the scene replayed again and again. The diner. The eyes on him. The way he hit the counter like a sack of grain. The way people looked at him afterward. No fear, no respect. Just judgment. Worst of all was the video. By morning it was everywhere. A shaky phone clip showed Etta being slapped. Showed Elias stepping in. Showed Brent on the floor, exposed and small. The comments cut deeper than any bruise. Coward. Trash. Arrest him. Someone had even dug up his name. Brent smashed his phone against the dashboard. Across town, Etta woke with a purple bloom spreading across her cheek. Elias made her tea the way he used to when he was small, and she came home exhausted. They didn't talk much. Some things didn't need words yet. "You don't have to stay," she finally said, watching him from the kitchen table. Elias shook his head. "I'm staying." She studied him, older now, heavier with things she couldn't see. "You always were stubborn." He smiled faintly. By noon, a patrol car rolled slowly past her house. Then another. Elias noticed. He always noticed. At the diner, Mason taped a printed sign to the window. "Zero tolerance for abuse." Business was slow. Fear lingered like smoke. Brent drove by once. Then twice. That night, someone threw a bottle at the diner window. It didn't break, but it sent a message. By the third day, Etta found a note tucked under her door. "Should have stayed quiet." Her hands shook as she read it. Elias felt something cold settle behind his ribs. This wasn't random anger anymore. This was intent. He called an old number he hadn't used in years. It rang once. A voice said. "You good?" "No," Elias replied. "But I will be." That evening Brent made his move. Etta was closing the diner early when the power cut out. The lights died. The street fell quiet. Too quiet. Elias, waiting in the truck across the road, felt it instantly, the shift, the wrongness. 3 figures emerged from the alley. Brent was in front. Etta froze as the back door banged open. She turned, heart racing, and there he was, face twisted, pride rotting into something meaner. "You embarrassed me," Brent snarled. "Now you're gonna pay." Before he could take another step, a shadow filled the doorway. "Step away from her." Elias's voice was low. Controlled. Dangerous. Brent laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You again?" The men behind him hesitated. They saw it now, the way Elias stood, balanced, eyes sharp. This wasn't a diner anymore. This was something else. "Last warning," Elias said. Brent lunged. He never reached her. The fight was short. Brutal. Precise. Elias moved like water finding cracks. One man went down screaming. Another ran. Brent hit the floor hard, breath knocked from his lungs. Sirens wailed, this time summoned by neighbors who'd seen enough. Elias stepped back, hands raised. Again. Etta watched, tears streaming, not from fear but from something like grief leaving her body. When the police arrived, there was no confusion. No lies that stuck. Witnesses. Footage. A pattern finally impossible to ignore. As Brent was hauled away, he spat blood and words he'd regret forever. "This ain't over." Elias met his eyes. "It is." That night, Etta held her son like she used to when storms shook the house. Outside, the town felt different, like it had exhaled. But Elias knew better. This was only the calm before the truth fully surfaced. And truth had a way of demanding its due. The town woke up differently after that night. Police tape fluttered outside Mason's diner. Brent Calder's name ran across local news tickers, no longer whispered but spoken plainly, paired with words like assault, hate crime, prior record. People who had once looked away now spoke loudly, as if volume could erase years of silence. Etta felt it most at the grocery store. Strangers touched her arm gently. Some apologized for things they hadn't done but had allowed. Others avoided her eyes completely. Shame traveled fast when it finally had to move. At home, Etta sat by the window, watching the street like it might betray her again. Elias noticed how she flinched at sudden sounds. How she double-locked the door now. How her prayers grew longer. "You didn't ask for this," she said one night, voice heavy. "All I wanted was a quiet life." Elias sat across from her, cleaning a small cut on his knuckle. "Quiet isn't always safe." She nodded slowly. She knew that truth too well. The charges against Brent stacked up quickly, but so did the backlash. Online forums filled with threats disguised as jokes. Someone spray-painted traitor lover on the side of the diner. Elias scrubbed it off before Etta could see, but the smell of paint lingered in his nose like a warning. Then came the visit. 2 men in suits arrived just after dusk. No badges. No names offered. They stood on the porch, shadows stretching behind them. "We're here about your son," one said calmly. Etta's heart dropped. Elias stepped forward instantly, placing himself between her and the door without touching her. "Say what you need to say," Elias replied. The man smiled thinly. "You've stirred up a lot of attention. Some folks aren't happy." "Then they should have behaved better," Elias said. The smile vanished. "We're suggesting you leave town. For your mother's sake." Etta found her voice then. "Are you threatening us?" The second man glanced at the street. "Just being realistic." Elias held their gaze. Long unblinking. Conversations over. They left without another word. That night Elias didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, back against the wall, listening to the house breathe. He thought of missions where danger was expected. Mapped, planned for. This was different. This was poison slipping through cracks. The next morning he drove to the courthouse. Inside, Brent's attorney argued loudly. Claimed provocation. Claimed misunderstanding. Tried to make Etta small again. Elias watched from the back row, jaw tight. Etta testified quietly, truth steady in her voice. The courtroom listened. Really listened. When Brent finally looked back at Elias, his eyes were hollow now. Fear lived there. That should have been enough. But justice takes time. And time gives cowards space to act. That evening a fire broke out behind the diner. Not big. Not deadly. Just enough to scare. Etta stood in the street wrapped in a blanket, watching smoke rise, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't keep being brave." Elias pulled her close. "Then don't," he said. "I'll carry it." In that moment, Elias made a decision he'd been avoiding. He called in every favor he'd earned in silence. If this town thought he was dangerous before, they hadn't seen anything yet. Because Elias Holloway didn't fight for attention. He fought for endings. And the next chapter would force everyone to choose a side. The first sign that things were changing came without noise. No sirens. No threats. Just unfamiliar cars parked too neatly along Juniper Row. Men who looked like ordinary travelers but moved with purpose. They didn't linger. They didn't stare. They noticed. Etta felt it before she understood it. "Your friends?" she asked Elias softly as she watched from the window. "Not friends," Elias replied. "Professionals." That word carried weight. By noon the diner reopened. Fresh glass. Fresh paint. A small American flag taped beside the door, placed there by Mason with shaking hands. Business trickled in. Then surged. People came not just to eat, but to be seen choosing a side. Across town, Brent Calder sat in county lockup, rage curdling into panic. His lawyer stopped returning calls. His friends vanished. The men who had promised protection went silent. Because records had begun to surface. Old complaints. Bar fights. Domestic calls that never turned into arrests. Patterns that suddenly looked very clear when someone bothered to connect the dots. And someone finally was. That afternoon, an unmarked federal vehicle pulled into the courthouse lot. By evening, the news broke quietly but spread fast. Hate crime charges elevated. Federal review underway. Witness protection offered. Etta didn't want protection. She wanted peace. That night, she sat with Elias on the porch, cicadas humming like distant engines. "I raised you to survive," she said. "Not to scare people." Elias looked out at the dark. Sometimes survival scares the wrong people. A truck slowed as it passed. Didn't stop. Kept moving. Good. Inside, Elias packed a small bag, not to leave but to be ready. Old habits. He checked exits. Lines of sight. He hated that his mother now lived inside his threat assessments. Then the call came. Unknown number. Elias answered anyway. "It's done," the voice said. Familiar. Trusted. "Tomorrow morning." Elias closed his eyes. "Thank you." The next day arrived heavy with heat. Brent was brought into court in chains. No smirk this time. No swagger. His eyes darted, searching for allies that no longer existed. Etta sat in the front row. So did the waitress. The grocery store manager from years ago. 2 former neighbors. One by one, people stood up and told the truth they'd buried. The room changed with every word. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was firm. Final. Bail denied. Brent sagged. Outside, cameras waited. Elias guided his mother past them, shielding her not with force but presence. A reporter shouted, "Ma'am, do you feel safe now?" Etta stopped. She turned slowly, looked straight into the lens. "I feel seen," she said. That sentence traveled farther than any punch ever could. That night, the town held its breath. But for the first time in a long while, Elias slept. Because the storm had broken. And all that remained was to see what the morning would bring. Victory never feels the way people imagine. It doesn't arrive loud or triumphant. It comes quietly, wearing exhaustion like a second skin. Elias felt it the morning after bail was denied, standing in the kitchen while Etta slept in the next room. The house smelled like coffee and antiseptic, comfort layered over caution. Outside, Juniper Row looked unchanged. Same cracked sidewalks. Same leaning mailboxes. But the air felt different. Like something dangerous had been named and couldn't hide anymore. Elias knew better than to relax. Hate doesn't disappear when confronted. It retreats. Regroups. Finds smaller, meaner shapes. By afternoon, the threats returned, subtler now. Anonymous letters to the diner's mailbox. Online posts warning of consequences. A rock through a window 2 streets over, meant for someone else but loud enough to be heard. Etta sat at the table, folding napkins with slow, careful hands. "I'm tired," she said. "Not my body. My spirit." Elias crouched beside her. "Then rest. I'll stay awake." She smiled sadly. "You always do." That evening, Mason closed the diner early. The sky bruised purple as the sun dropped, clouds dragging low like they were listening. Elias walked the perimeter, counting steps, noting shadows. Old instincts hummed, steady and cold. A car idled too long at the corner. Elias stepped into the street, visible but calm. The car rolled forward, then sped away. Inside, Etta lit a candle and prayed, not for protection this time, but release. "I don't want to be afraid of my own town," she whispered. Later, a knock came at the door. 3 short taps. Elias opened it to find Sergeant Renner standing alone, hat in his hands. The older man looked smaller now. Older. "I owe you an apology," Renner said. "No excuses. No qualifiers. I was wrong." Elias studied him, measuring sincerity the way he measured threats. Finally he nodded. "Say it to her." Renner did. His voice cracked halfway through. Etta listened. Then surprised them both by taking his hand. "Do better next time," she said. "That's all I ask." When the door closed again, Elias felt something shift. Not trust, but possibility. The longest night came after midnight. A fire alarm shrieked from down the block. Then another. False alarms. Distractions. Elias was already moving when the back fence rattled. 2 figures tried to climb it. They didn't make it far. Elias stepped into the yard, voice sharp and low. "Leave. Now." One man bolted immediately. The other hesitated and paid for it. Elias didn't strike him. Didn't need to. He disarmed him, pinned him, and held him until police arrived. When the lights flooded the yard, Etta stood in the doorway, candlelight trembling in her hands. "Is it over?" she asked. Elias looked at the man being led away. At the quiet street. At the house that had held so much fear and still stood. "Almost," he said. By dawn the town knew. Arrests followed. Names named. The web finally pulled tight around those who thought intimidation could erase truth. Etta watched the sunrise from her porch, wrapped in a blanket, light warming her face. She breathed deeply, slowly. "I think," she said, "I can sleep now." Elias sat beside her as the day began. One chapter left. One final reckoning. And then, something like peace. The courthouse steps were already crowded when the sun cleared the rooftops. Cameras lined the sidewalk. Microphones sprouted like weeds. This wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a reckoning dressed up in legal language. Elias stood beside Etta at the edge of the crowd, his presence quiet but immovable, like a pillar the world had finally noticed. Brent Calder arrived in chains. No shouting. No defiance. Just the dull shuffle of a man who had run out of places to hide. His face was thinner now, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights and the slow realization that the town he thought belonged to him had turned its back. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Every bench was filled. People leaned forward as if gravity itself had shifted. The prosecutor didn't waste time. She played the diner footage first. The slap echoed through the courtroom speakers just like it had echoed through Mason's diner. Etta's breath caught again, but this time she didn't shrink. She sat tall, shoulders squared, eyes forward. Witness after witness followed. The waitress. The neighbor. The man who'd filmed it. Then the patterns, dates, reports, silence calls laid bare. The truth assembled itself piece by piece, undeniable and heavy. Brent's attorney tried to interrupt, objected, deflected. But every attempt collapsed under the weight of evidence. Then Etta was called. The room held its breath as she stood. She didn't speak long. She didn't need to. "I was slapped," she said simply. "Because he thought I would take it. Because I always had before." Her voice trembled only once. "But I'm tired of being quiet." Something broke open in the room. When Elias was called, he rose slowly. He spoke carefully, not as a soldier, not as a hero. As a son. "I didn't step in to hurt anyone," he said. "I stepped in so my mother wouldn't feel alone." The judge listened. Really listened. When the jury returned, it took less than an hour. Guilty. On every count. Brent collapsed into his chair as the word landed. No drama. No outburst. Just the hollow sound of consequences finally arriving. Outside, the crowd surged. Questions flew. Cameras flashed. Etta stepped forward again. "I forgive him," she said into the microphones. Gasps rippled. But forgiveness doesn't cancel justice. The sentence would be handed down the following week. But the outcome was already clear. As mother and son walked away from the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Strangers nodded. Some cried. Some clapped quietly. Elias felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Release. That night, they returned home under a sky scraped clean by stars. Etta sat at the table, hands steady now, folding napkins she might never need again. "You stayed," she said, "when you could have walked away." Elias looked at her. "I came back for this." Outside, the town settled into a new shape, uneasy but awake. Tomorrow would bring sentencing. And with it, the end of a long, painful chapter. One more sunrise stood between them and something they'd almost forgotten how to imagine. The sentencing hearing was quiet. No cameras. No shouting. Just the soft scrape of chairs and the low murmur of a room finally done pretending. Brent Calder stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit that swallowed whatever pride he once carried. When the sentence was read, he didn't react. He simply nodded as if some part of him had known this ending all along. Years. Mandatory counseling. A permanent mark that would follow him wherever he went. Justice didn't smile. It never did. Outside the courthouse, Etta breathed deeply, the way people do after surviving something they didn't think they would. The sun felt warmer than usual. Or maybe she just noticed it more. "You ready to go home?" Elias asked. She took his hand. "I think I am." Life didn't snap back to normal. It rarely does. Instead, it rebuilt itself in small, honest pieces. The diner became busy again, not as a spectacle but as a place of comfort. The sign stayed on the window. Mason added another beneath it. "Respect is the house special." People lingered longer. Laughed easier. Etta returned to her routines. Morning walks. Church on Sundays. Tea in the afternoons. But something inside her had shifted. Her back straightened. Her eyes met others more often. Silence no longer felt like safety, it felt like a choice. One afternoon she found Elias in her old kitchen, packing his bag again. "So soon?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. He nodded. "Duty calls." She studied him for a long moment, then reached into a drawer and handed him something small and worn, his father's watch. "I kept it safe," she said, "in case you ever needed to remember where you come from." Elias swallowed hard. "I know." They hugged in the doorway, holding on just long enough. As Elias drove away, Etta didn't wave frantically like she used to. She stood still, strong, watching him go with pride instead of fear. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Written in careful script. "Because of you, I spoke up today." Etta folded it neatly and placed it beside others like it. Proof that one voice could wake many. That evening she returned to Mason's diner. Sat at the counter. Ordered coffee. The mug was new, unchipped. When she lifted it, her hands didn't shake. Outside, the town moved forward, imperfect but changed. Somewhere far away, Elias stood at attention under a foreign sky, thinking of a small diner, a slap that became a stand, and a mother who refused to stay invisible. The world hadn't become kinder overnight. But it had been challenged. And sometimes that is how change begins. With one quiet woman. One son who came home. And a moment that refused to be forgotten.